value to our shared customers, the state of Washington. So, as government agency IT management, CISOs, deputies, some long title I can't recite already. In the leadership roles that you're in, we deal with technology, but that's not how we get things done. Technology is just a small element of actually how we're successful in making change in the state. And this is, I'm sure, not unusual across all the sectors, but again, we're here to talk about from agency perspective in Washington and how to be successful and really moving forward and helping through change, helping staff to adapt to new processes. Who was in the last panel in this room? A lot of great examples, right? Yeah, a lot of great examples that are really going to overlay nicely into what we're to talk about here on the how to build buy-in and create champions. How we measure adoption and success. How do we know we're making a difference? How do we know we're incrementing forward, making change sustainable, etc. So they're going to share us some examples. They have a shared project across the enterprise as a whole with the Secure Service Edge, and implementing that with their agencies, really changing the culture of how we do different types of business functions and bring business value and secure our assets and move the needle forward in so many different ways. That may be, again, a common use case to ground us in this culture of change. So we are open for audience questions along the way. Poor panel. I told them originally, all right, we got some questions. The last 15, 20 minutes, we can open it up. Nah, we'll open it up in the beginning. Because, again, we're here for y'all. We'll start with some conversation. But if you have a thought that's in that train and that's that path, we want to be able to really meet that need and have some good dialogue. And we'll be agile in that as well. So, again, please do leverage this fantastic panel today. So, are you ready to get started? All right. Kelly's ready. He's ready to run. He's got his not running shoes on, but he's not afraid to make the hike around the room here. So, explaining the why. I want to start with Kirandeep here. Sure. How have you framed the purpose of major technology shifts, such as, you can use SSE as an example, or other projects is fine as well, in a way that connects to the agency's mission, builds understanding amongst staff, and all those that you need to work with, those business partners, etc. How have you done that?
You wanted to ask me a loaded question today, right, Mark?
Just to start off. I mean, it depends on how many more loaded questions.
Yeah, of course, thank you. Every time we talk about technology shifts, like Zero Trust, as you said, what we have to start with is the human impact, not just the technical specs, because we always forget that, how it's going to impact the staff that is going to support that, right, or how it's going to work. As IT leaders, CISOs, managers, directors, and everybody, it's our responsibility to guide people through this change, right? And when how we did it, we framed exactly these changes as initiatives, as mission enablers, right? For example, Zero Trust isn't about locking everybody's access, right? It's about, how we can, secure our every interaction with the customers we serve, right? Let's connect it in that way. It's also, to connect and resonate with the staff around VPN performance, right? They connected and resonated very well with them because it's a big problem for them right now. Clunky remote access and things like that. And when we talked about all the advantages that this solution will bring in, because again, I want to talk about how our technology landscape is changing today, our work from home, and everything. This is much needed, right? Because we have to adapt to the changing environment, and we explained why the SSE would eliminate all these and help them and empower them in return to be more effective in serving our constituents, right? So they resonated with that, right? We have to make the purpose tangible to them, right? What they can, instead of talking in acronyms, we showed, what we did was we shared stories like, imagine yourself serving a constituent, securely to help file for the claims and things like that, right? Because we are the forefront, and my staff is daily dealing and interacting and helping people file those claims, right? We talked about an acknowledging, changing technology landscape, right? We need these solutions. We need to evolve with technology, otherwise we're left behind. We heard everybody, Bill Kehoe and everybody, we need to secure our systems, right? No matter where we work from, we should be able to serve our constituents at the end of the day. And also, we didn't push the change from the top. We invited our SMEs, our technology enablers, our champions in the discussions that this change is for you guys. You guys have a seat on the table. Come help us develop this solution, test this solution. Earlier, a lot of you guys were in the talk with my boss, Lisa. She might have talked a lot about agile methodology that we're utilizing within ESD to totally frame that and help enable our staff, build this solution for themselves, right? And I have seen firsthand how it had enabled the no-goers from, I hate this technology, into, I love this, I don't want to go back now, right? But we have seen a 360 shift into that. So, some of those things weren't.
Yeah, absolutely. So raise your hand if you're from an agency, your state staff. All right. For all of those that absolutely love, keep your hands up. All right. All those that love VPN, keep them up. Yeah.
Caesar
We've
would
got
do
one.
that.
We've got one. And his opinion might be a joke. But,
No ugly babies.
every audience that y'all talk with and work with, that's right, all my babies are pretty.
Of course.
And no ugly babies. But all the different audiences you work with, understanding where they're coming from, what their pain points are, how this helps them is super important. When you talk to security, you're talking about the security benefits, moving to zero trust and getting to application level X, Y, or Z. In this example, talk to end users, you're like, that thing you have to toggle on and off all the time that you love so much?
Yep.
Yeah, it solves that. Isn't that great? So that explaining the why, it varies by audience. It's talking to leadership. What is the benefits? How you can be more efficient, more secure, less risk. So that's really appreciate the reflections there. Those are fantastic. It really goes to that ADKAR model a little bit there, right?
Yep.
Build the awareness. There's a lot of desire. I just saw a lot of desire in the room here a minute ago. Yeah, see, I got some OCM points there for a minute. That's great. But that desire to make a change, finding those reasons for that is fantastic. But shaping culture and mindset. We're going to turn to Senthil now. So what culture or mindset changes have been most critical to get your teams, so your internal as well as your business partners and perhaps external folks, needed to embrace new processes and in this case security approaches, et cetera, to really modernize and move forward?
I think the primary element has already been mentioned, which is when we talk about, for example, rolling out our SSE solution, we really didn't talk about it in terms of feature sets. Nobody really cares. Nobody cares what Netscope can do. Nobody cares what the feature sets are. Nobody cares how well it performs. Ultimately, it's how can it enable our internal teams to fulfill their mission. So our agency's mission is to protect the climate, the ecological environment of our state. It is from a security and IT perspective, to enable them to fulfill that mission. So as long as we can describe what an SSE solution means to them in their day-to-day operations, that is significantly more relatable than me listing a product brochure or what the feature set of the SSE solution that we're deploying is. I think the second thing that we did is a concept I heard from both of our major cloud vendors called shift left security. It's not a political ideology. The concept behind shift left security is that we are moving security from the middle or the end of that product pipeline as far left as we can. We're democratizing security. We're explaining to our staff that security is a shared responsibility. It is not just me and my staff's ability or task to protect ecology. It is really up to all of our staff to participate in making sure that we are able to deliver the service to the public that we are tasked with delivering. That also means a partnership with not just with our agency programs, but also with WaTech and also with OCS. I think it's only collectively working together that we're able to actually achieve that shared vision and maximize taxpayer dollars. We don't want to waste money. We don't want to waste time. It also means a lot of transparency. So we are very clear that there is no wizard behind the curtain. I document every standard that I hold ecology to. It is never a secret. Everybody knows how we determine whether our environment, our applications, and our systems are secure. I think also ultimately in describing security as more of a journey, I think we heard that earlier today too. It is not a destination. We're not done. There is never a done. And changing the expectation that my agency has that it is a journey. I am always going to be coming back to them with something else and a new way to improve the security posture of the agency. If I approve an application yesterday, it doesn't mean that it is permanently forever safe to use within ecology. We're constantly evaluating risk, and we try to make sure that everybody's aware that it is a journey. Finally, metrics is another way to reinforce the cultural mindset required to achieve our goals. But ultimately, what I've discovered is that no one cares about metrics. You produce them, they get filed away in somebody's folder. So I don't focus as much on metrics, but I do figure out what is the way that I can distill that down into an element that is relatable without overloading it with data. Some really good examples are Azure has a secure score. The state uses a threat analytics tool called Neurons. It translates risk into effectively credit scores. If I explain to management that if my credit score is 454, I'm not going to be able to buy a car. We really want to be in the 750 to 850 range. 800 is the bar. Then I can go buy that 400 I've always wanted to. That is more relatable to my staff and my management than showing them a range of data and metrics or how much phishing attacks are reduced or how many viruses I've prevented, because none of that's relatable to anybody but my team. So those are some of the ways that we've worked inside of ecology to change the culture and the expectation of what security really means. And when we adopt new tools, new solutions, ultimately it's about how can we fulfill them, their ability to fulfill their mission.
Good. So, yes, perfect. I was going to say, remind your audience you can ask questions. But we got a microphone here for the camera and anybody online.
Oh, no. Oh, that's a very powerful microphone. So I think the part that I wanted to talk through and maybe dig a little deeper and simple is what you spoke about as far as from a product perspective, your team members not necessarily wanting a brochure delivery, but more an understanding of how that relates to everyday work. And I also feel like that's a thread to our last panel when we talk about personas, right? And when you think of navigating through change, people are wondering what's in it for me, why do this? And I think there's change fatigue, which is a regular experience. So my question for you is, how granular do you feel like you had to go when you think of helping teams understand what that change means for them, whether it's from a persona standpoint or otherwise? But granularity is my question.
I've tried to stay very high level, and I've never really delved deep into everything that SNC is going to do for ecology or for the state. However, I have focused on elements that can relate to. Mark mentioned one of them. When my staff suddenly figured out they could get to their internal purchase tracking system without having to log into VPN, there was vocal joy.
Celebrations in the streets.
That is something they can relate to. Now, it happens that I can not only enable them to get to the purchase tracking system without VPN, but I can enable them to do it securely. They don't really care about. I do. And so it's a win-win for me.
That's good. Sir, all right, one more question out there. Microphone over here. Yeah. You didn't know you were going to do polls.
For Mike.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hearing that maybe it's being framed as qualitative versus quantitative. Maybe you lose people with it if it's too quantitative. But I also wonder, both because the staff isn't necessarily the people that need to benefit from the overall mission of the agency. So if there's a gap between what the public needs versus what the staff would prefer to do in their daily work, is maybe the choice, maybe the wrong metrics are being used rather than try to make it relatable necessarily. Do you have could you elaborate a little bit on that maybe as a possible reframing?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. We use the fish firewall phishing simulation service that the state runs, and we have metrics on how many staff click on those fake phishing emails that come through. I do publish them. No one really cares. It doesn't mean anything to them that pick a number. 3% of staff are clicking on these links. So I've got to be able to translate that into something that does make sense to them. And some of that is the news example that came up this morning. Ultimately, the mission is we don't want to end up on King 5 News. But that also can't be the overarching guiding principle. We can't be afraid to take risks. And we were talking about this earlier. Ultimately, you can't be afraid to fail. You can't be afraid of taking risks. And so I don't publish statistics like in Fish Firewall because ultimately it doesn't mean anything to anybody. But I've got to be able to translate that into something that they can understand. And some of that is just explaining to them that they don't want to be the face of ecology on King 5 News, and it happens to them what's happening in Arizona.
Can I jump in here for just a second? Both quantitative data and qualitative data is very valuable. I don't want to undermine the value of that data. I guarantee you, if you walk up to 100 people who work at ecology and say, after we're done with the SSE, we expect our phishing score to go from 92 to 97, they're going to go, what does that even mean? But if you walk up to those same 100 people and say, hey, when you're working from home, if you forget your password or accidentally lock yourself out, you don't have to drive into the office to fix that. They're going to go, when can I get that? Please, right now. And you're able to do that in the context of not having made the entire environment less secure. You've actually made the environment more secure in the background. So you've got something that IT cares about and something that you can directly point to and point to data for at the same time as you've reduced utterly meaningless work for somebody who is out working in the field and now has a problem that they no longer need to go into the office to fix, because you've simplified the approach that they can use to get securely into the system.
Yeah, you have to know your audience, what's in it for them, what's gonna really move and help them their understanding with where they're at. Because everybody we work with is in a different place, right? So I'm also a data person, but I'm making informed data decisions based upon where we need to go and move that forward. But the end users, they have different things that they're trying to get their jobs done. They're doing their work. They're very great at those things, and we need to remove barriers and yet still increase the security. So it really depends on which audience you're speaking with and where the data is, whether it's quantitative, qualitative, and where you're going from there. That's fantastic. I appreciate it. Yeah, another question.
All right, so I have a question kind of a little bit on the different side of this, I think. So I think it's safe to say every agency, different culture, right? We all have different goals there. So my question, I'm kind of curious on what the perspective is from each of you on this. And it's really change fatigue. So with modernization, there's been a lot of changes. I see a lot of change fatigue, especially on the business side. And in a lot of ways, it is making their lives easier. It's making things better, but it's still a lot for both business. So kind of curious, what does the change fatigue look like and strategies you've dealt with for that, both on the IT side and the business side of the house?
That's great.
I think there are two challenges there. Change fatigue is real. Even within ecology, there is a lot coming down the pipeline, both from the state level and from what we're trying to accomplish. And we all know that there's the public state employee inertia mindset, right? We've done this way for 20 years. Why should we change? Part of, I think, two approaches that I try to take is one is try to help our staff understand that let's take two examples, cloud and AI. We are now at a point where cloud is yesterday, it's not today. AI is not tomorrow, it's today. So if you aren't already knowledgeable in cloud from a career perspective, as a state employee, you're behind. If you're not investing in AI, you are not current with what the rest of the world is doing. So I think it's helping the staff understand that, yes, there is a lot of change coming, but if they're truly invested in improving their career opportunities, both within ecology and the state or the private sector, then you have to embrace the changes that we are trying to adopt. And for some employees, it may not matter. They may not have that career path. But my experience has been is that when I'm trying to explain to my staff that the changes that I am trying to implement are in their best interest, regardless of whether they stay with ecology for the next 20 years or not, then that means more to them, because it's really, it's not just for ecology's best interest, it is in their best interest to adopt the changes that we're trying to implement.
Anything to add on perhaps to the business side as well of that change?
No, totally. I think it goes back to my earlier point too, right? Human aspect in that, right? We need to resonate and connect staff, to your point, right? Change, it's not like, I was going to answer that in my next question too, but I'll take that on. We have to build a movement, right, here. For that people to understand and resonate that the change is being built with them, not for them, right? We need to resonate that how it's going to impact them in, again, delivering the services that they're working for. Yes, by building that, people resonate and understand that. And it has worked very well for our agency, not only from business side of the house, but from the IT side of the house too, because I overlook both the sides, so.
And when you create that energy, that change fatigue, it's not a thing that's being done to them. It's a thing they're excited about to move forward because it makes their job easier in some way or another. Or they're passionate about security and it makes it more secure. They're passionate about modernizing it and it helps move that. Their end users are passionate about doing their job without shooting them out VPN. Do I need to disconnect? What's going on? Is it a Zoom call or a Teams call? And what do I need to do with my next meeting? So really locking into where that's at. But it takes leadership, and that's where I want to go next here, is leadership and sponsorship. It's such an important element. So Keith, this is for you. What leadership behaviors or sponsorship models have you found most effective in driving lasting cultural change within your agency? And I may have a follow-up on this after you're done.
There might be. And there's
just because I told you I would ask you something that wasn't.
So I'm going to take them in the opposite order, actually, because I do want to talk about sponsorship for a second. I think it's really easy in the state to think, I need a sponsor. And yeah, you need a sponsor, right? Like that's fundamental. But who is your sponsor? Is your sponsor just a name you put on the page and you completely ignore? That's actually a perfectly reasonable approach, but it misses out on one of the great opportunities of a sponsor. If you actually dig into the definition, it's on the WaTech site for sponsors. One of the things that stands out to me there is that they are able to effectively create change in the service or create change in the application. I'm paraphrasing it there. The whole idea is if you have a sponsor who isn't equipped with quantitative data, qualitative data, narratives that they can bring around for personas and benefits of the project that you're doing, you haven't given yourself the very valuable tool of a sponsor who is equipped with the information that they need to be not just a name on a page, but an actual champion for your effort. Because right now, if we have that phishing data, right, and your sponsor is going and walking to somebody who nothing about IT, right? Like they wear hip boots and talk out to people causing trouble in the woods, right? Like if it's that person and you say to them, well, our phishing score is going to go from 92 to 98, they're going to say, what's phishing? But if your sponsor's equipped to talk to a group of people like that, whether or not it ever comes up, they're going to understand how the change that you're making applies to the business and the work of the organization. And when they understand how the change that you're making applies to the work of the organization, fatigue is not automatic with change. Too much change can cause fatigue, but it is not inherent. If you were walking along carrying two 40-pound sacks of rocks, and I told you, you can set that sack of rocks down, and then like 20 minutes later I said, you can set that other sack of rocks down. You're not gonna go, why are you making changes so often? You're going to be really happy you're not carrying 2 40-pound sacks of rocks anymore. Look for how to frame your change in that and transform your change so that your change is actually valuable to the people that you're putting change in front of. And that's why I said I would talk about sponsorship. Now I'm going to turn to leadership for a second, and I'm going to mention a few things that I found have been incredibly useful in leadership for making big projects with lots of change. One is, don't try to pretend that you can do it with a few IT experts and none of business in the room. Be willing to bring people's input in, even if you don't know what to do with it, and hear people. But there's a warning there. Don't turn around and promise them something, right? Hear them. You might then later be able to promise them something. But one of the biggest ways you can disappoint people is hearing people and promising it, and then having no ability to deliver on those promises, right? But you still have to hear that information because that's where your valuable input from business lives. And then make that information available. A lot of times with projects, we think about, well, where do I keep the information? What information do I make sure that my sponsors have access to? What information do I make sure that my project team has access to? What information do I need to make sure that each person has access to? And that's super valuable. I didn't ask you and invite you to add one more question to that is there any information I actually need to keep secret? Because the fact is you probably don't have much information, if any information in the project, that you actually need to keep secret from people. And you can, in fact, use modern collaboration tools like Teams, where you can put all of your information in there, lock down just the very parts, if any, that you need to lock down. And then if somebody else, I literally have multiple projects cooking right now where if somebody requests a document from inside of our team, I grant them access to the team. They can always remove themselves from it. They have the opportunity to right click and say, I don't want to see this team anymore, and they're done. But that way, they're not coming back to me a little bit later and going, where's this other piece of information? What's the context for it? Because they get access to it all, and it's right there. And you would be surprised how much it reduces people's objections just to know that you're giving them as much of the picture as you can right out the gate. It's huge, and it really enables people, and it really empowers them to ask better questions and be better participants in the projects.
Feedback's a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a gift. So within DSHS, you've had some leadership and probably, I don't know what level of sponsorship changes of recent,
The whole stack.
Yeah, the whole stack. So what have you seen be successful getting new leaders and sponsors of existing efforts successful as you moved on? I imagine probably some of those things we were talking about earlier of data and metrics and what's in it for me for the different audiences probably played a part in there. But what have you found to be most successful in getting folks up to speed, where they can also then be in that leadership and sponsorship role internally?
Yeah, we have a presentation that we did. So when we decided to get on board with the SSE effort, which was last January, it's about a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago now, we made a presentation to our executive leadership team. And frankly, these are people who do not care about an SSE. They care about our data being secure, and they care about having access to it. So we had to come up with a story for them that was true to what we were trying to do. It explained what we were trying to do, but it also made it personal, and it gave them direct benefits to the organization that they could hang their hat on, as it were, right? And we gave that presentation to our executive leadership cabinet, which is 14 people, and had unanimous consent to proceed. No dissent. It was absolutely, yes, this is 100% a thing we need to do. Go do it. And we've changed CIO since then. So of course now our CIO, and we've changed CISO since then. So now our CIO and our CISO are here, and their names are effectively on this big project that they don't actually know anything about necessarily, or the history of it. And so for us, it was very important to bring them into a small group, basically just do another run of the thing that got everybody else on board in the first place, and let them ask questions. And then ask them if they want to go and do another run with our executive leaders to update them on this effort. And that's it. They said, yes, exactly. This still looks like a very good thing that we're doing. I'm glad we're doing it. We've had a bunch of turnover in that team as well. We had unanimous consent before. I'm confident we can get it again, even in this strong budget plan. And so we're doing that in a few days. It's the very next step we're taking forward. But to have a leader who sees how we got there and sees why it matters and get the opportunity to ask the questions they wouldn't ask individually, gave them the opportunity to step forward and become that new sponsor and step in and take that role that the previous sponsors had.
I'd like to add to that a model that's worked for us is having leadership that is comfortable empowering the staff that's responsible for executing on the vision. Ultimately, leadership should be about establishing the roadmap, establishing the vision, the direction, where you want to go and why you want to go there, and then let your staff execute on that and not micromanage that. When staff know that they are being trusted to leverage your expertise and execute on your vision, we found that they have more buy-in. That's much different than management that is going to explicitly dictate how you get from point A to point Z, rather than just giving you guidelines, criteria, vision, values, mission statement, and then letting your staff get there.
Fantastic. So I'm gonna pause, do the awkward pause, see if the audience has any additional questions before we continue on. All right.
So Keith, in the analogy of the person carrying the rocks, how do you address the challenge when it's that person's job to be carrying those rocks?
I'm going to tell a story about a really good example I saw of this, actually. So everyone knows we've done a bunch of lean efforts in the state over the past, couple of decades at this point, right? About 14 years ago, I was working for the Department of Commerce, just had become Commerce from CTED. We were being led by Rogers Week, who came from Microsoft. He had a plaque on the wall that said, it was an award for being a VP who on the Longhorn project who left before it shipped, which I just always absolutely love. But we were looking at doing a lean process to invoice payment, because a huge part of what commerce does is invoice payment. They put grants, those grants get paid. There are invoices from the grant recipients for the money that they are receiving. It's a very routine, very big part of their process. And we put the process map up on the wall in one of the conference rooms and worked through it. And it was massive. There was over a dozen handoffs for every single invoice. I want to say it was like 17 handoffs or something like that. It was this person checking this person, and this person logging it, and then this person checking the log and all that sort of thing. And they started to make that change. And they said, this is what this process, we want to condense it to. And all of the people who processed invoices started to fight it because they were taking away their work. And they're like, you're just going to make our jobs go away. Very rational thing to say. And Rogers did a fantastic thing. He wrote to the whole organization. So this is the director of the agency writing to the whole organization, says, we are doing lean efforts. If our lean process produces an outcome that eliminates your work, we will find more meaningful work for you that you can do well. He made that promise to the staff, and we did that. We had a couple of finance people who actually ultimately ended up taking on more responsibility in different areas because their capacity had been freed up and the organization had been empowered to take those human resources, which are incredibly valuable and very hard to get in the state, and use them to do more meaningful work. But it took that leader being willing to step in and say, we will do this. And we successfully implemented the lean effort. I was not part of this, I was adjacent to it. It was amazing to see. It's stuff.
And I think it's also helping staff be aware. When we've been pretty aggressive about moving from on-prem infrastructure to ADS and native Azure. And the first question that a lot of our infrastructure staff asks is, what are we going to be doing now? Are you taking your jobs away? Well, I think an example that we used is either you spend a year and a half upgrading VMware on-prem, or you can do what you really are supposed to do, which is managing the servers and being an administrator of those servers that the applications run on. Is that we're shifting your skill set to the areas that are more productive for you, have more value for you from a career perspective, and have more value for ecology. We don't need you to spend a year and a half upgrading VMware. That's just not a productive use of time. And they do see that because we're able to show them that they have roles in ADS and Azure, and they're able to develop their skills and still be productive.
and I can tie this directly all back to you all. Put your hand up if you are in agency IT. So you're working agency. Now, put your hand down if you do not have a backlog. Congratulations, you know what you do if you make something more efficient.
That's great. Back to, so y'all probably in some way work in technology or adjacent technology, correct? Yeah. So I would imagine that most of you aren't in the CLI or the deep guts of a system as a technologist, and you're actually, in order to get work done, you're working on all these things. We're working about communication, working about change management, working on how to sponsor things, how to get the right information and build the right relationships to move forward, right? That's, technology used to be, I'm a mainframe programmer, and I got to do this thing heads down the whole time. And that was obviously just one element, but such a large part of what IT did in the past. Today, IT is so much more than that. It's working with the business, it's understanding those things, it's understanding our staff, it's understanding the industry working across, and building all those paths to success. So, has there been, and I'll ask this to everybody, but I'll start with Aaron Deep there. Have you received any or seen any resistance that you need to work on to reduce? It doesn't have to be an SSE. You can use whatever example comes to mind. But what kind of methodologies and things have been successful in working on resistance? We've already touched on some on staff and carrying rocks and fear of job loss and how to upskill. But anything else comes to mind, Share?
Oh yeah, again, I'm gonna go back and connect what Sentinel, Keith, and everybody here has echoed already, right? We need to build a movement here. And how we are doing within ESE, I'm gonna speak to that, and this is a real example, SSE, that we are working with people. We have commissioned a full-fledged enterprise portfolio project for SSE internally, to be run with a full OCM management PM associated to it to understand exactly the changes it's going to require for us to onboard this technology, right? And this has helped us listen to each and every voice. You were mentioning earlier here too, right? Understand how it's going to impact people, how it's going to change the job role. So we are not only helping our agency move into taking this as a solution, but we also are helping people understand how it's going to change their jobs also and how they're going to fit into the new roles. It's part of all our OCM strategy, which is why we onboarded this as a project in our agency, and it has and we have given back again. Our staff are running this project. They are championing the project. They are building the backlog, as you're saying. They're identifying all the business challenges that they are looking into and are facing with this technology. They're building full backlog around what's being taken care of, what needs to be done, and also partnering with WaTech and the vendor in helping understand where the gaps are. They're building a full runbook to themselves that this is for us to be successful in providing the services that we're going to be delivering at the end of the day. It's not about that this is going to eliminate our jobs, but again, we are giving people an understanding. This is how it's going to reshape the work within our agency, and this is what role you have to play in. It's again our whole strategy around full buyback from the sponsorship, and by leading this by a great sponsor and the PM and the SMEs like Zach sitting here. He's leading the project for ESD from an SME perspective. They are tackling challenges every day, understanding and also solving and building that momentum within the teams where, when I was saying we saw the shift, give it to me today, right? Rather than where it was, a few months ago, we don't like it, we don't want change, right? They're adapting to it, it's always on, they're like, I love this thing right now. So yeah, we are utilizing all the tools that are disposable from a project management perspective, and they're working really well for us, so.
You get something? No. So OCM, everybody knows the value of OCM, I hope. Right? Have you seen projects without OCM fail because you didn't have OCM? Yeah, exactly. And over the last, so who's state staff? Who's been with state for at least 5 years? Oh, look at that! Right. Thank you for your service. I think it's awesome. Big portion of the audience here. So historically, what has your experience been sort of globally with leveraging things like OCM to move these key initiatives forward in the space of IT related efforts? And we don't have IT projects because they're all there for business. But I think there's been a significant shift in using organization change management to help with all these things you're talking about, and to be an extra tool and advocate in that space has really helped move the needle in operating as an enterprise, operating across agencies, operating to the place where there's a shared understanding. So not quite the same rock analogy, but my answer would have been in slightly different ways. Like, well, if there's 1,000 rocks and I got 1,000 people, everybody can put a rock in their pocket, nobody knows the difference. And we'll get there, and it's easy because it's shared responsibility, shared ownership. We can throw some in the woods on the way by that are no longer needed, and no one cares. You shed those rocks, but it's not down to here's the person, because you're communicating, you're sharing, you're building that. What Gurdeep keeps talking about with that big coalition of folks that understand, that want it, right? Drive that change. That's where the culture shift happens, which is pretty phenomenal. So, pause again for questions. Again, this is for y'all. They're got obviously real world examples of how to affect good change in a fast time period in agencies. Any questions? So you know what happens when you have side hallway conversations, then you get the side hallway questions, Keith. You had an example that you shared with me earlier. I really liked.
All right, sure.
Yeah, something about something that was at least 15 months down to 3, and how that happened, what that was, and all of these aspects that are not technology related.
Not technology related.
Maybe use that as an example to share of how success can be
Well,
formed.
we heard this, right? We heard, and it's come back up in here. I think actually you mentioned it with Bill say, or no, it's not Bill, you mentioned it. Someone did, it wasn't me. We don't want to be on the news, right? We don't want to be on the news, right? But also, I want to say, have you looked at how IT projects end up on the news? It usually means they've been years and years and years in the making, and they've gone massively, massively over budget and still not delivered. I don't think I've ever seen a news article about a $100,000 IT project that accidentally delivered like 3 weeks later than it expected to. And I think we scaled down, and I'm not saying, don't take these things seriously, but we scaled down that big risk of big news, and we use it to even mute or blunt our own efforts or willingness to attempt to do projects quickly or aggressively or effectively at a small scale. And I can give a really specific example from DSHS. We have a project that has a drop-dead deadline of September 30th right now, where we're replacing a product. Now, this is a product we've been using for almost 20 years. It's integral to business for around, we have about 1,100 monthly active users for this. And our licensing cost for it has gone from $350,000 6 years ago to this year it would be over $900,000. And about 3.5 months ago, the person who owns this product and this budget sat down with me and my cloud team, my cloud enablement team, and said, so I want this next time we renew the product to be the last time we renew the product. I want to transition this to a cloud service. I think we can save money and get a better product. And I was like, I absolutely agree. I think you can too. Why are you giving me a 15-month timeline? I don't think this is a 15-month project. Can we do this in 3 months before we renew? And it was like nobody had ever asked, right? Like, well, of course we can. Well, it takes us a long time to do a project. I said, okay, so let's talk about the actual downside risks of this project. What happens if we try to do this replacement and it goes completely haywire and it doesn't work at all, right? We go and we renew the budgeted license item and then we still follow our 15 months timeline. What have we spent in the process? We started to dig into it and we're like, we've maybe spent like $4,000 on cloud services and a little bit of engineering time with this vendor and some staff time, and determined we couldn't do it. And he went, I don't know, it still feels really aggressive. And then a couple days later, we were like, yeah, let's do it. He came back to me and he said, yeah, let's do it. And now we had 1,100 monthly active users to migrate. As of yesterday, we were at 700 active users this month. So we're, about 60% of the way migrated, and we have a week left. I think we're going to migrate the remaining 400 users in the last week. But we couldn't have succeeded without the willingness to recognize that we actually had a failure path there, and the willingness to bring people on board. At this, I checked right before I came into this meeting, we had 95 people in the team working on this effort. Has every one of them been dedicated to this effort or doing a huge effort? No. But every one of them has contributed something to the project. They've had access to the documentation, and they have thus become part of helping this project to succeed. And I don't think we could have made this happen without those ingredients. The way to find a path that had some risk, but it was risk we could absorb. The way to have a backup plan, and the way to know what that backup plan looked like, and the buy-in from people all over the organization. And as a result, our costs next year were budgeted for this for about $985,000, and the replacement product is going to come in at around just $210,000 or so, $210,000 with better functionality. But it's because we finally ripped off the bandage and decided to deal with that and modernize it. We couldn't have succeeded without all those ingredients.
This is a fantastic example, as each of you are, each of you are leaders in your space, whether you're influencing agencies through industry partnerships or direct state staff. There's massive opportunities to do things differently, to do things better, to innovate with the how we get to those business outcomes in a much better way, like many of those other items. Go ahead.
I'm going to add something to that too. We're not going to immediately sweep that budget. We're going to sweep a big chunk of savings from it. But I'm arguing for us to continue to keep a little bit of that, because it looks like we can actually grow the replacement and use it to displace other legacy items, because we now already have the team that's already familiar with it and we're already building it. We've seen 2 other targets that we could take on where we could save the organization money and build capability. And we're just building that on the success that we've already had there, right? Rather than immediately realizing that success, pulling the money away and going, great, the only thing we were doing here was saving money. It's like, well, where can we also build capability?
Yeah. Thank you. That's fantastic. Like I said, it was worth a walk in, right? That was a great example of how to change the culture, lean forward and move that direction. I'm not seeing any hands, so I'm going to, and we'll still have opportunity, we have about 10 minutes left, talk about lessons and advice. So for each of you, and we'll start with Senthil here. So looking back, what's been the single most important lesson that you've learned about creating these cultural changes in government spaces here that you're in? What advice would you give your peers for similar transformations? How do you make a difference? What's your advice?
I think I would say unanimous consent is not needed. Neither is majority consent. I don't need everybody to agree with what I need to do in order to protect a college. So when we rolled out SSE, I really didn't go out to the network team and infrastructure team, and my leadership empowered me. We took 2 of our security team, and 3 months later, we're all on board. So, and then the first time it was 6 months, the second time it was 3 months. So ultimately, it's that small groups of teams that are empowered to make decisions can move very quickly, as long as you keep in mind that you don't need everybody to see the same thing you do and the same way you do. You just needed people that the leadership and sponsorship to empower you to move in the direction that they've indicated is good for the agency, and then you just move in that direction. So sometimes, yeah, I may have a lot of people that just don't like what I'm doing, and I'm completely okay with it.
All right, Keith.
There is almost never a perfect choice. You've all heard the phrase, the grass isn't greener on the other side, or is the grass good? There's all variations on that, right? I will say in IT, all the grass is brown. But you should pick the brown grass that works for your organization, right? It could still have a really lovely view and be a great spot to, play a couple of lawn games, to overstretch the analogy, right? If you can get people to recognize that there's no such thing as a perfect solution, and buy into the solution you all have committed to, like Senthil was talking about, you can make so much more progress. And you can do it while creating room for people to disagree about the choices and to have constructive disagreements that lead to agreement on the path forward.
So don't let perfection stop progress, right? Forward momentum. Yeah.
Totally, yeah, no, I concur with both of you guys too. And the other element, I think, what we have seen has been a lesson learned that has created culture change is trust, right? How we are building trust with our staff, right? How we are empowering them. It goes back to, again, the whole gimmick around, yes, we don't need the whole agency to make a decision. That's why we as leaders bear that burden to make that decision and then have the staff buy off on why this would be good. So we need to connect them to that solution, have to resonate them very well. Yes, this makes sense for us to go there, right? So, and then from there, let them be in charge, right? Like for UAT's testing, they are in the driver's seat. They are driving everything. We are just the enablers, helping them overcome any challenges or issues they're facing to enable them to be successful in this journey. So that's our job, and we're doing it, with the full OCM management, and we have built that trust. And I think, and as again, I was saying, we have shifted, and Zach can quote me for that too. We have shifted from no gears to, yay, we want this tool now, right? So, and it's going great.
Fantastic. All right, final 5 minutes. Is there any questions for this fantastic panel?
Well, I have the mic, so I think I can ask a question.
Yes, you can. You're like, I don't want to walk anywhere.
Go for it, yeah.
That's great.
And this is kind of playing off of what Karen Deep just mentioned, but if you could address what you have experienced in partnership between agencies on projects versus the facade of partnership. What do you see as the keys to that being a real partnership that's driving that cultural change forward, and that the larger theme of connected government forward?
I'd like to jump in on that. SSE, rolling out the product, has been a collaborative effort.
Yep.
And it's been one of the more collaborative efforts, along with the SAW replacement, which I thought was also a fantastic way to run. Everybody participating and building on what other folks have done. So it is not a silo. It is not about us versus them, or me versus you. It's ultimately, what do we learn collectively, and how can we pass that knowledge on so that the next agency that's coming into the pipeline doesn't have to reinvent the wheel and discover everything that our groups have already discovered. So I think that's common.
I paid him to say that, by the way.
Keith, anything to add on that space?
I mean, it's fair though. I mean, the SSE project and the SAW replacement have both been excellent examples of collaboration. And the worst thing to happen to WaTech in the last year, because now you've set the standard for how well you have to build projects going forward.
That's a great problem to have. Because we can make such a more impactful difference to our shared constituents and residents and businesses, et cetera, in the state by working together in that way. It's been fantastic.
No, totally, and I would agree to that too. I think that's what another thing that resonated very well with our staff was that we have a seat at the table, right? Earlier we didn't used to, right? No offense, right? We have a seat at the table not only to craft a solution for our agency, but for the whole state here, right? We're gonna be the enablers here. We're gonna be learning from the lessons here, and so that every other agency can piggyback off that and don't repeat those mistakes. So, and it's been a great partnership with Mark and Kelly. They are doing an amazing job of running this project. Thank you to you guys. It's been a great journey, and this transformation was really needed because of all the changing landscape we are in today. So, thank you.
And I want to point out there's other folks in the WaTech end, including Steve
Yep.
and Danielle, who've been very helpful in the process. So the collaborative nature has been very much appreciated from the agency.
Totally.
Yeah, and just to add, we're here at Washington State IT Industry Forum, number 5. You remember from this morning, number 5, and they keep getting better. But we also couldn't. There's no way we could have ever dreamt of doing this without our industry partnerships. We have fantastic partnerships that are really leaning in, understanding our use cases, and improving their products to meet our needs. If you were in the last panel, you heard Tim from Workday talk about unique additional functionality added to their portfolio to meet Washington State needs. Well, that's the same thing that we have here when we have good partnerships with industry to be able to lean in and say, hey, this is what Washington needs, and make it happen. To the place where they put a POP on the West Coast for us, a point of presence. So that really helps in that kind of partnership as well. So the partnership between agencies, partnership with our industry partners, and WWT in the mix as well there to really make things move forward. We appreciate all of it, because when we're together, we make those 15-month projects go in 3 months, right? And that's pretty exciting. 3 months in a week, we'll give you a little stuff from there. But with that, we're